Hello, everybody. Welcome into the Fantasy Pros Dynasty Football Podcast. Haven't said that in a while. I am Ryan Wormeli, joined by Pat Fitzmaurice and by Scott Bogman. Guys, we are back. I was going to do the, guess who's back? Back again. I mean, there was a whole bunch of different intros I wanted to roll with, but really, I'm just excited to be talking Dynasty with you guys. Of course, our audience has been hearing some Dynasty conversation in season. Fitz did Dynasty Discord stages. He did one with Bogman. He did one with myself every month. So there was some Dynasty conversation going on, but we are now back with the trio of us here every week talking all things Dynasty. We're talking rookie class for 2025. We're talking startup rankings. We're talking anything we can think of related to Dynasty. Today's episode is about the 2025 rookie class. We'll be giving kind of an early preview as we sit here in mid-January. Of course, a lot of this stuff is subject to change over the next couple of months. I am surprised that Bogman was even willing to do a show with me after what happened last Saturday, Bogman.
Yeah, I was going to say some of us, are looking forward to the draft already.
Yes.
And some of us still have a team alive. Not me and Pat. We both had terrible weekends, but at least the Steelers lost the day after the Longhorns lost too for me. So that was a lot of fun. Great weekend. Happy birthday, Bogman. So great time for me. But yes, look, I'm excited for this class. There are a lot of good running backs. Fitz and I have gone over that. I'm sure you've been talking about it as well, Worm. There's a lot of good RBs. And I think the wide receiver class is better than people are giving it credit. Lots of good tight ends. Quarterback's lacking. I think that is accurate as what people say. But I'm excited to dig in and talk about it and really get into the big diving and the Senior Bowl and the Combine and the Pro Days and the interviews and all the craziness that comes with NFL draft season.
Yeah, really looking forward to the next few months. We're going to have other folks popping on the feed too. Debro will be on here previewing the Senior Bowl, reactions to that, Combine, those sorts of events. So we're going to have, other voices on here as well. But obviously the three of us are here for most of the time, week-to-week basis. Just a reminder for everybody that all of our 2025 consensus rankings and tiers can be found at FantasyPros.com/rankings. We're still in the early stages of updating those in terms of rookie rankings and stuff like that. But if you want to look at our staff Dynasty rankings, you can navigate that as well. But again, FantasyPros.com/rankings, and that will continue to update with rookie stuff as well throughout the season. Fitz, before we kind of dive in position by position, Bogman just sort of started to allude to this, but what's kind of your overall macro level, this is the state of the rookie class as we sit here 3 months before the draft?
Yeah, first of all, belated happy birthday to Scott Bogman. Glad the birthday came after the Texas and the Steelers losses.
And I still had a great time.
Good.
So
good.
Yes, thank you.
I'm liking this class more and more. The more I dig into it, and I've actually been watching film breakdowns of some of the wide receivers the last few days, and starting to feel a little bit better about that group. It's certainly not as star-studded or as deep probably as last year's group, but not a bad class there. Tight end, some exceptional prospects. Running back, just deep and top-heavy. And quarterback, this is a lacking quarterback class. Not as bad as the Malik Willis, Kenny Pickett class of a few years ago. Right. And I feel a little bit better after watching some film breakdowns of Cam Ward and Shedeur Sanders than I was feeling maybe a week or two ago. Not sure about the class after that as far as the quarterbacks, but I'm starting to like this class more and more. Maybe not as top-heavy and star-studded as last year's class, but this is not a bad class.
It is weaker, particularly at quarterback, than some recent years, but it's a good point that this isn't a year where the first quarterback to go off the board is going to be 20th overall. Two of the top three picks in the NFL draft will be quarterbacks. Now, we're not going into this saying these are as good as Caleb Williams, Jaden Daniels, Drake May were as prospects just a year ago, but it's not. That's a good point of comparison to say this isn't quite 2022 level of week. It's just kind of a step down from some of these other years we've had recently. Let's start with the quarterbacks. We're going to go position by position and just kind of give a rough overview. We'll talk about, some of these guys in rough order of the ways they're early ranked. I mean, this isn't a strict ranking. This is not our ranking. It's just kind of some of the names, at each position and just kind of our early thoughts and, maybe questions we have about these guys, stuff we want to see get answered throughout the draft process, guys who, maybe we care more about their landing spot than others. Just some general thoughts on these players here as kind of an early intro to the 2025 rookie class for those who maybe are just now diving into it. Obviously, there's a lot of folks out there who do great work kind of covering the rookie class during the college football season. We tend to primarily focus, on the season at hand and redraft when we're in the fall. So now is kind of the time that we extra dive into it, even if we've been paying attention all along. But for those who are kind of along for the ride with us at this time of year, an early preview. The two names to talk about at the top, Fitz, you just mentioned Shedeur Sanders from Colorado, Cam Ward from a lot of places, but most recently Miami. Those are the two that are very certain to go, with top 3, top 5 picks in the NFL draft. They're maybe the only two that'll go in the first round of Superflex rookie drafts. I mean, we can get into that conversation as well. Bogman, just when you think about these two names, first and foremost, do you have a preference between Sanders and Ward, both in terms of the NFL draft and in terms of dynasty rookie drafts?
Yeah, for me, it's Cam Ward is number one. And I think Fitz and I were talking about this the other day on the Discord. We are a little different in that because I believe he has Shedeur Sanders at 1. But they are, as you mentioned, Worm, 1A and 1B in terms of this class. And I think the reason that I give the edge slightly to Cam Ward is that I think that he is more willing to bail out and get those rushing yards. And I think Sanders can. He doesn't. He backs up a little bit too much. Both these guys hold the ball too long, which we've seen Caleb Williams have massive issues with in Chicago. So these are not clean prospects coming in. I think that Cam Ward is the better of them in terms of fantasy because of that rushing upside. He doesn't like to bail out, though. He likes to hold on to that ball, and he has, as everyone has mentioned in every profile I've seen about Cam Ward, ice in his veins. He does not care about the pressure. He kind of looks psychotic back there a little bit because he just does not bother him. He is calm, cool, and collected about it. So the footwork is good. He can throw off a bunch of platforms. Yeah, sometimes he gets a little too brave with the ball. But I think he can make every throw as well. And I think I think the big flaw in his game is holding on the ball too long. And I think if you fix that, you have a very good prospect here. So he is my number one.
I also, in very kind of early assessment, thinking about this, have Ward ahead of Shedeur. Fitz, Bogman just alluded to the fact that you have it reversed. You like Shedeur Sanders slightly ahead of, I assume slightly ahead of Cam Ward. What's your reasoning behind that?
I do, and maybe Cam Ward is a little toolsier and might have the higher upside. But as Bogman's, it terrifies me how long he holds onto the ball. And I do just think he has maybe a bit of a fatal hero ball tendency at times where he just wants to make the big play and at times will put himself at risk of disaster plays. Major fumbling issues too. And I hate how when he is scrambling around, he has this bad habit of holding the ball one-handed and low at his waist or lower. He coughed up a lot of fumbles, and I'm fearful that if they make him a full-time starter as a rookie, he is going to be sacked at a David Carr-like rate, the way he holds on the ball. Now, Shedeur can do that too, but I think Shedeur was forced to operate a little quicker in the pocket because his offensive line was not nearly as good as the Miami offensive line.
It took him a while to fix that this year.
It did. But I just think there are all these misconceptions about Shedeur and what kind of player he is, and maybe that is part and parcel with being the son of one of the best athletes to ever play in the NFL. You would think Shedeur would be like this athletic running quarterback. Not at all. Athletic, yes. But when he is under pressure and scrambling around, and he can scramble, he will put Kobe Bryant moves on pass rushers to escape harm's way in the pocket. But he keeps his eyes downfield, and he is looking to make a play through the air when he's scrambling around. I don't know. Maybe at some point, I feel like he has the athleticism where he could translate that into maybe low-level running ability at the NFL level. He's never going to be certainly a Lamar Jackson or probably even, I don't know, Jordan Love type running ability is probably his ceiling. But man, there's a lot to like about him. Good enough arm, not a rocket, but good enough, great ball placement, throws with anticipation. I feel like he's really conscientious about like keeping the ball out of harm's way where it can be intercepted, where he's going to like leave his receivers open to kill shots. Just like a really kind of smart as far as a processor, but he's an interesting prospect for sure. He's unique. I know I put it out on Twitter the other day. Like I couldn't think of a comp for him, and about like 300 plus people replied to me with comps, most of which I thought were terrible. Like he's really hard to comp. Like there's just not many people like him, but I do now, after worrying about him, now I think he is worthy of a top 5 pick.
Let me follow up quickly, Fitz. I want to see if Bogman has any comps in mind or any thoughts what you said, but I want to ask some of the off-field stuff. How much are you weighing leadership ability in a young quarterback when you're making a rookie draft decision? Because it's the one position where it matters, obviously, right? Like the quarterback has to have some degree of being able to control the huddle, the locker room, being a leader. And I mean, I don't know the guy. I'm not like sitting here saying he's some terrible, person who, his head isn't screwed on straight. But there have been moments of me kind of being worried about him throwing teammates under the bus or being out for himself and not for the team. And I worry about how that might translate to an NFL locker room, especially if you're not this, legendary prospect in terms of like the talent you're bringing on the field, maybe a quality enough prospect. But if you're not coming in with the hype of a Trevor Lawrence or Caleb Williams, and you also maybe have some attitude stuff, again, I don't know him, so I don't want to kill the guy, but there have been enough reports about that to kind of be in the back of my mind.
Yeah, there have been some missteps in press conferences. There was that, moment where he could have been a little more graceful with the Colorado State quarterback who had talked crap about Colorado and maybe Deion before that game, and then they trounced Colorado State, and I forget what Shedeur said to him afterwards, but probably not the most graceful comments. Yeah, there are going to be some stupid things said about Shedeur Sanders in the run-up to the draft from some of the worst people in sports media. And I think people think like he is this Nepo baby and immature and all this. And on the other side of the coin, like imagine the pressure of being Deion Sanders' son, and you've played for your dad throughout your college career, not only at Colorado, but at Jackson State. And for the most part, considering the pressure he's been under, I think he's done a decent job of managing himself. Like it's hard to relate to that sort of pressure and that sort of situation for a guy when he's in his early 20s. And I know how ridiculously immature I was in my early 20s. I wouldn't have handled that situation well. So I would sort of fade the noise that you are going to be hearing over the next 3 months or so in the run up to the draft, because we are going to hear a lot of like slander on Shedeur Sanders. And I don't know, man. Like, I don't think he's a bad kid.
Bogman, what do you think?
I think the exact same. I mean, why did he act like, some of these are personal? A lot of those were personal attacks, and his dad is the coach. So, they were personal. It wasn't just a rivalry thing for a lot of this stuff. So, and also let's leave the college stuff in college. So, if he starts to have a problem in the NFL, then I'll kind of start to worry about it. I just don't think that it's a red flag, right? He wasn't caught. He's not getting DUIs or, anything involved with the law. So a little immaturity is fine when you're in college. Baker Mayfield had the same thing, probably way worse. He did get arrested, running from the cops. So there's way more guys with bigger issues that don't have the type of pressure that Sanders had coming in. So I really don't care about it.
Yeah, I definitely want to emphasize that I'm not saying like like you said, no DUIs, not like a guy.
But it's going to be talked about. All this stuff is going to be talked about. You're absolutely right, Worm. This is, and Fitz is right too. The worst people in sports media are going to say a lot of stupid.
And
things
I also don't want to punish him for his dad. Like I am turned off by a lot of the bravado from Deion Sanders, like just personally. I hate when he comes out and says stuff like he won't let his son get drafted by the Browns. Like that's I know we've seen stuff that happened in the past, like with Eli Manning 20 years ago, but that's not how this works. I
hate it.
Yeah. It really rubs me the wrong way, and I don't want to punish Shedeur for my opinion of Deion. And I think some people will do that. So I just trying to be very cognizant of it. But before we move on to the other quarterbacks, so last year, obviously, these guys would not have gone anywhere close to Caleb, Jaden, and Drake. Would they have been in the same tier with Penix and McCarthy and Bo Nix in your guys' opinion, or would they have been even below them?
They would have been below them for sure for me. Cam Ward, the closest. I wasn't sure about Sanders, really. I don't know where I'd put him now. Probably well behind all of them. But, Cam Ward would have been the next guy after those dudes. I don't know where I would have put Sanders, honestly.
I would guess they would have been in the Bo Nix neighborhood. Basically, the NFL is saying you're either a first rounder or you're not good enough. Like the day two, and there are a lot of guys in this class who people are going to be talking about, well, he's an interesting day two prospect. Day two is the NFL telling you you're not good enough. And I think these guys still would have been first-round picks last year.
So last question on these two, just very quickly. In a Superflex rookie draft right now, I think they're probably the only two we would have in the first round, and correct me if I'm wrong about that, in terms of the quarterbacks. Where in the first round are they? Are they, because it's a quarterback and they're going to go high in the draft, this means they have to be top half of the first round picks in a Superflex rookie draft? Are they more back half guys because you like the running backs and receivers? Fitz, where would they fall?
Between 2 and 6. I could see either of them falling behind Tet McMillan. Jeanty's going number 1. A lot of people are going to have Tet McMillan number 2. If we found out from a team that they intended to make Travis Hunter a wide receiver only, I think he probably goes ahead of these guys. And some people are maybe going to like Omarion Hampton so much that he goes ahead of these guys. But I don't think they go any lower than 6. And if they do, I think they're just ridiculous values at that point.
Same range for you, Bogman?
Yeah, I think Fitzy's right in like where I would rank them as prospects would probably be behind a bunch of those guys, like 6, 7, 8. But in terms of desperation for almost every Superflex league, they're going to be the first 2 guys taken after Jeanty, I would believe, in most drafts. So I do think I would have them behind a grip of the running backs and maybe a few receivers in terms of where they should go, but where they will go in most of your drafts, because QB, those teams picking up near the top need QBs most of the time. I think they'll go 2 and 3 in most drafts.
Bogman, how big is the next tier of quarterbacks? Because then I wrote down some.
One to me.
It's just one?
Only one.
Okay.
Yeah, it's Jalen Milroe.
Okay.
And Jalen Milroe is actually my favorite prospect, QB prospect in this class.
Oh, interesting.
But in terms of fantasy, I don't know if he starts for the next 2 seasons, and I don't think he should start for the next 2 seasons. I think he should get the full Jordan Love treatment, where a team with a good quarterback that's established and maybe a little bit long in the tooth should draft Jalen Milroe and, wait a couple years for him to start, because all the athleticism is there. The arm, enormous. The legs, electric and incredible. He would probably be the number 2 rushing quarterback right behind Lamar if he was dropped in immediately. So I think there's so much, there are so many great tools for him. He needs to work on the footwork. He needs to work on the decision-making, pre-snap reads. There's a lot of the game that he still needs to get to that he doesn't have right now. It would be very foolish of a team to drop him in, even at the back end of next year, I feel, for him to do that. So he is very much a developmental prospect, but for me, he has the highest upside of any QB in this class by a wide margin. So Milroe is actually my favorite, and he is the one guy that I think will go in the back end of those super flexes as, to someone that needs to wait or has the opportunity to wait. You already have 2 good starters, draft Milroe and stash him. So I'm really excited about Jalen Milroe.
Fitz, do you also see him as a tier of 1?
I think so. Yeah. Crazy tools, running ability, big arm. But, he is sort of like an Anthony Richardson, Malik Willis type prospect, where he is just not refined enough as a passer. And we saw that with the touchdown-interception ratio this last year, 16 touchdowns, yes. 11 interceptions at Alabama. I mean, what would that look like in the NFL? Probably like a 1-to-1 ratio, and that's not good enough. He would need,
that's being kind.
He would need refinement. And I've seen mocks that have him in the top 10. Like, I get it with the tools, but if you start him in year 1, you're courting disaster, because he is nowhere near ready to be an NFL quarterback right now as a passer. He's not. But, I get it. The arm and the rushing ability is pretty intoxicating. And then, I know some people are going to want to put Jackson Dart on that level. I don't know if I see it. I mean, he's interesting. Like, he's mobile. He's got a good enough arm, really nice touch on the deep ball. But if you go back and look at Jackson Dart's college career, he would often struggle against the best defenses he faced. His numbers against Georgia, his numbers against Alabama, his game against Kentucky in 2024, who had a fantastic defense. Like, I don't care if you can light up Furman. Like, I want to see you do it against the best defenses, and Jackson Dart really didn't do that for the most part.
Bogman, does anybody else stand out to you on this quarterback list? I mean, obviously your guy Quinn Ewers at Texas, Jackson Dart, Fitz just mentioned, Dylan Gabriel at Oregon, Will Howard at Ohio State, Kyle McCord at Syracuse. I mean, that's getting pretty far down the list, but does anybody stand out to you?
Yeah, I mean, Dart is fine. I think Quinn has, again, a lot of the tools, but needs a lot of refinement. And that's a guy that started more games. So, I think probably you're looking at a backup for the rest of these guys with maybe potential starters if they sit for a while and start to learn the game. Then they get their shot, maybe an injury, and then maybe you see if you have something with them. So, but I think the rest of them are pretty much backups at this point. I do think Quinn has decent tools. I think Will Howard has the size. Riley Leonard, has the athleticism, but I kind of see Riley Leonard as a potential to switch to like a Taysom Hill type of role, right? He could really do anything he wanted on a football field. So if he just wasn't making it as a quarterback, move him to tight end, he'd be great. Move him to running back, he'd be fine. He's a very, very good athlete. So, but yeah, Kyle McCord, really good on the back half of the season. He had that disgusting, nasty game against Pitt that I couldn't believe that they didn't bench him in, where he threw 6 interceptions and 3 pick sixes. It was disgusting. And he really took that game and buried it with a great performance on the back end. So a lot of buzz for McCord moving forward as well.
By now, most of you have probably heard of Reality Sports Online, the powerful fantasy sports platform where owners get to build and manage their fantasy team like an NFL general manager. But the question is, have you tried it? It's time to go see what all the buzz in the Dynasty community is about. Free agency, multi-year contracts, a rookie draft, multi-team trades, franchise tags, contract extensions, first-round rookie options, automated contract and salary cap functionality, and much, much more. Think it sounds complicated? It's not. The best thing about Reality Sports Online Fantasy Front Office is that it doesn't take any more time than a standard league. It just requires more strategy. Think you're among the fantasy elite? Well, this is the platform to test your mettle. Still not sure? You can test out your general manager skills for free in a mock free agency auction. If you like what you see, use promo code FantasyPros to receive a 10% discount on your team or league today. That's promo code FantasyPros to receive a 10% discount on your team or league today. Fantasy just got real at realitysportsonline.com. All right, let's go to the running backs here. Fitz, obviously the conversation begins with Ashton Jeanty. There is a really good class. There are very good options that you will be able to take in the first round of your rookie drafts, and yet Jeanty is still a tier of his own. He is very, very hyped, as a prospect. I don't need to describe who Ashton Jeanty is. Obviously, he was a finalist for the Heisman, an unreal record, season at Boise State.
Can I just throw a stat at you real quick?
Yeah, please.
Worm. Cam Scatterbu, second most missed tackles forced with 102. The next highest in this class was Omarion Hampton at 72. And Ashton Jeanty had 151. So that is just if you just want a different level of a prospect, that is Ashton Jeanty. He is unbelievable.
So let me ask you this, and Fitz, I'll start with you. Just in looking at recent drafts, obviously there wasn't really anybody last year in the running back conversation that would have been anywhere close to this. Ashton Jeanty or Bijan as prospects only, who was better?
Bijan. And
Okay.
we had talked about this a little bit. I think you and I were on one of our Dynasty Discord shows where it's Bijan has pretty extraordinary movement skills and athleticism, and I don't think that Jeanty can quite match him there. The secret sauce for Jeanty is his contact balance, which is maybe among the best I've ever seen. I mean, it's just crazy. You cannot knock this guy off balance, and it takes
it's a pinball.
Yeah, it takes a small army to tackle this guy. Good luck bringing this guy down. And I mean, we saw that, and I know like some people were sort of live tweeting during the game against Penn State in the college football playoffs where, oh, look, put him against a good defense, and he's not so tough. Well, he finished with like 140 yards from scrimmage in that game.
Yeah, what a miserable game.
Yeah, a couple of highlight runs where he broke like 5 tackles on one play, and just like he is absolutely going to get it done at the next level. And I mean, he is a pretty extraordinary prospect in his own right. I don't know what he's going to run. But it's not like he's slow either. I mean, he might not have the same speed as Bijan, but not worried about the speed, and just he's so hard to bring down, and a really smart, patient runner, good vision. He is pretty much the total package.
So what about if he's lower than Bijan, again, as kind of a dynasty prospect coming into the league? I assume he's higher than like a Kenneth Walker. Is he like in that Jahmyr Gibbs, Breece Hall range? Would be ahead of those guys? Is Bijan the only guy ahead of him in recent years, or is there a couple other?
I personally, I would have put him behind Gibbs, and I would have put him behind Walker, but those are the only guys. The Ashton Jeanty for me.
No one loved Gibbs. I don't think anyone was like head over heels talking about Gibbs the way they talk about Jeanty until Gibbs got drafted as early as he did, and then kind of people reevaluated. And Breece Hall and Kenneth Walker, the year they came out, were, I think the consensus was Breece Hall was like the slightly better prospect, but they were both pretty similar. I think Jeanty is a better prospect than all three of those guys going into the draft before we know where they're going to land. Because I do think there was some sort of reevaluation of Gibbs after he was drafted so early.
Jeanty will probably get similar draft capital, though, right? I mean, we're in a lot of mock drafts, he's going in the teens of the first round, which as a running back is remarkable. And obviously Gibbs is 12th. And
I think we're starting to get the kickback on the running back hate, specifically in the draft, right? And with contracts. I think after we're seeing Derrick Henry go to Baltimore and light it up, Saquon go behind a good offensive line and put up 2,000 yards. I think we're getting a reevaluation overall of the position, and I think we're going to see Jeanty go in the top 10 to 15 at the very least.
So
I think he goes top 10 pretty easy.
Right now, before knowing his draft capital and landing spot, Bogman, he's dynasty RB what?
I have to catch up. Because I haven't done the rank. I've been working on baseball rankings. Fitzy has him at 3. You got him at 3?
Behind
Bijan and Gibbs.
That's it. Yep.
Yeah. That's pretty high. I actually do. I hate comps, and I do have a comp for Ashton Jeanty. It's mini Marshawn Lynch.
Ooh,
that's how I see him.
I like that.
Okay, so is there, like, I'll phrase it like this, Fitz. Are you even willing to listen to somebody make an argument for why someone else should go first in a dynasty rookie draft this year? Or is it so cut and dry that you won't even hear an argument against Jeanty?
Well, we talked to someone on one of our users on Discord, Bogman and I did the other day, where we were, it was someone who was quarterback needy and had the 101. And, was it acceptable to take one of the quarterbacks ahead of Jeanty? And Bogman and I slightly disagreed. I said no, maneuver around and trade back if you must. But I don't think it's logical or reasonable to take either of these quarterbacks who are far from foolproof over a running back prospect who I do think is pretty foolproof, barring injury. So, no, I'm not willing to entertain any arguments for anyone else at 101, quite honestly.
Sounds like maybe you are willing to hear those arguments, Bogman.
I'm willing to hear them. I'm not willing to do them. I'll say that. Like, there is no scenario where I have the number 1 pick and it's not Ashton Jeanty. But I do understand the frustration of not having a quarterback in a Superflex league and just wanting to take your shots. That, coupled with the fact that there are so many good running backs in this class that could end up, depending on landing spot, as a very high-end dynasty asset. We'll go through them in a second here. Yeah. But there's so many other good ones. And there's not in terms of quarterbacks. It is Sanders, it is Ward, and then it's Waite, at least to the back half of the season, hopefully a season and a half or more for the rest of these developmental quarterbacks to perform. So, I would entertain way more trading out of that spot and getting your quarterback than taking one of these. But I understand the frustration, and it's going to happen in some Superflex leagues. Someone's going to be stacked at running back, need a quarterback, and they're going to take Cam Ward. He'll get Jaden Daniels comps. And by the way, I was looking at time to throw. Cam Ward, number 2 of 84 in longest time to throw. Sanders is 9. So these guys hold on the ball a long time. But I think that's the scenario where you see it. Personally, I would not do it.
So who's next, right? We know Ashton Jeanty is a tier of his own at running back. Is it Omarion Hampton out of UNC? Is it Quinshon Judkins or Travion Henderson, both out of Ohio State? I know our former coworker Thor likes Caleb Johnson from Iowa. Like, who is the next guy up after Jeanty at this position, Bogman?
Yeah, for me, it's I think there's a group, right? It's Omarion Hampton, the big thumper from UNC. Just a lot of fun to watch, violent runner. I would love to see him. Then it's the combo of these guys, Judkins and Travion Henderson. I mean, you've seen Judkins play with his hair on fire in the tournament. He has been unbelievable. Travion Henderson came in with maybe some – I mean, this is kind of why they went out and got Judkins, was because Henderson had some injury issues in his career. I feel like during this tournament he has kind of put those to bed. That speed is incredible. And I think Cam Scatterbo has to go in there as well. So Scatterbo has to be in this group because of what he has done. And maybe – I think a lot for him is going to depend on what he runs at the combine, because at his size, great. We've seen guys with size before dominate in college, come to the NFL, and just not be able to do anything. So I think he needs to run well, but I also think he's going to run well. So I think Cam Scatterbo has to go into that group.
It is Scatterbo, not Scatterbo, right?
Yeah, I always screw it up.
Okay, I just want to make. I'm sure I will mess that up at various points throughout this show. Yeah, I mean, it does feel like a group. Like Fitz, I don't know if you disagree. You may have a favorite at the top, and I think I know who your favorite is, but I don't know that anybody has separated themselves in terms of being their own tier after Jeanty, or do you see somebody who's really kind of put some space between them and the other names here?
I kind of think Omarion Hampton is a cut above the other guys, and maybe not like a huge gap between him. And for me, I guess it would be the 2 Ohio State guys, Judkins and Henderson, and maybe Caleb Johnson. I don't like him as much as Thor Nystrom does, but I just Omarion Hampton's blend of speed and power is pretty extraordinary. Like there is a lot to his game that reminds me of Jonathan Taylor. I don't think he has quite the speed, just pure speed that Taylor has, or quite the same footwork. But Jonathan Taylor was not much of a pass catcher coming out of Wisconsin, and Hampton is actually a pretty good pass catcher. Like, I think he had over 40 catches, I want to say, this past year. I'd have to double check that. But Hampton is just, I love how no frills he is. He is all business about getting north-south, but yet he's got a little bit of niftiness to kind of swerve and just elude contact when he's working his way through traffic. Man, I just think he's going to fit in right away. And with his size and, he is a potential workhorse. Like Ashton Jeanty, I think he can come in and be your clear feature guy right off the bat. I don't know who else I have that sort of confidence in this class. So it's kind of those 2 guys, to me, a cut above. Jeanty a clear number 1, Hampton a clear number 2, and then the conversation starts.
I think I'm going to be really happy if I'm a team that wants to get a running back in the first round of my rookie draft, and I'm picking, more in the back half. Like, assuming Jeanty and Hampton are gone, I'll be really happy if I'm coming away with Judkins or Henderson. Like, Obviously, Quinshon had that awesome freshman season with Ole Miss before he transferred. Travion Henderson, I did a Devy league, as Campus to Canton league, but, we were drafting the college side of things a couple years ago, and he was like the 4th overall pick. Like, there was a lot of hype for him, and I know obviously you kind of split time when a guy like Judkins is in the backfield too, but like I think he's really talented too. Like, I think for those 4, Jeanty, Judkins, Henderson, and Hampton, whatever order it is, I'm not going to be too dissuaded by landing spot for any of those guys. Like, I'm really interested in them as NFL running backs. The guys below them I like, but I'm going to be more interested to see where they land and what kind of opportunity I envision early on. But like, to me, like those 4, at least in terms of my rankings, would definitely be like first round guys in rookie drafts, just given the weakness at quarterback and everything else. And then, beyond that, Johnson, Scatterbo, whoever else you want to mention, I think that's where you get into like, maybe if they get in this ideal landing spot, I consider them there. It depends how you feel about, receiver and tight end. Does that feel like a fair assessment, Bogman?
I think so. Yeah, and there's still a lot more to like in this class after those guys too. So, Dylan Sampson, big time prospect out of Tennessee, lots of carries, can catch the ball. A lot of touches for him, just a shade under 300. You mentioned Caleb Johnson, who a big part of the Iowa run game. That's always been the thing about the Iowa run game is everyone knows it's coming and they still can't stop it, right? It's the offensive line, it's the running backs, it's the tight ends, it's everybody working together, and he was a big part of that. So Caleb Johnson, a huge prospect. And then there's guys that are a little sneaky. Devin Neal from Kansas, sneaky.
Debro just started tweeting about him the other day, so I know he's been watching film.
Ooh, he is lightning.
Yes.
Fast. He's quick as a hiccup. I mean, if you give him a sliver of daylight, he is gone. Kyle Monongai from Rutgers. That's Bucky Irving this year. That's this year's Bucky Irving, I feel like, is Kyle Monongai from Rutgers. A dude that is a little bit undersized. Maybe he's not going to put up ridiculous numbers at the combine, but you watch him play, he does it on the field. That is where the work is done. So there is just so much to like, and there's more that we don't have time to get into as well. Taj Brooks, Ollie Gordon had a bad year this year, but was a big-time prospect before that. There is a lot to this running back class.
Yeah, which of those names, and obviously there's a lot of names, but Fitz, of those guys kind of in that group below, the Caleb Johnson, Scatterboo, like you start getting lower in the rankings, who stands out to you most? I know you and I have talked a little bit about Monongai on one of the Discord shows. Obviously, Ollie Gordon, like DJ Giddens. I mean, there's this class is not only top heavy, it is also deep. It is remarkable.
Boggs just talked about RJ Harvey from UCF. Really interesting, and man, like he has big time movement skills. I think he's going to be a fascinating one to track through the pre-draft prospect. I am a sucker for the power guys. I mean, maybe those guys are not great in Dynasty, but like Taj Brooks is just he can be the thunder in a thunder and lightning duo. I don't know if he can be the do-it-all guy. Monongai is really like big play guy, but I worry a little bit about a smaller back who doesn't catch passes. And he was pretty much completely uninvolved in the Rutgers passing game. But Devin Neal is a favorite for sure. And I mean, Devin Neal, like every time you would watch a Kansas game, it was like all about whether the opposition could stop Devin Neal. Like he was just such a difference maker for the Jayhawks this past year. But it's a good deep class. And I mean, Scatterboo, how many yards from scrimmage did that dude have? Like 1,800 this past year and like 24 touchdowns.
Again, everybody knows it's coming. Everybody knows it's coming, and he still gets them, and it's the stamina too. And that this is, the reason Najee Harris was good, and when he ever is good, is because he has the same energy in the first quarter where he gets tackled for a 2-yard gain, where everybody has the energy. He has that energy in the first quarter. He has the same energy in the fourth quarter, and he's running dudes down. So that's a big part of his game as well.
And before we move on, just one point about Scatterboo. Like, I don't think he's going to run a sub 4.5, and he might be closer to 4.6 when he runs. But we have dismissed small, and he's not like that small, but we've dismissed in recent years, or at least I have, Kyren Williams and Bucky Irving because they were smaller backs who didn't exactly melt stopwatches at the combine when they ran. Don't make the same mistake with Scatterboo because like Bucky Irving and like Kyren Williams, an immensely productive college player.
Quick reminder to join our Fantasy Pros Discord community. We've mentioned Discord a couple of times on this show. We had that running in season. You can chat with other fans and get access to exclusive AMAs that wind up on our podcast feed. Come get your questions answered and be on the show at fantasypros.com/chat for our Discord community. Let's go to the wide receivers. Interesting class. This is the one where I am most interested to see what you guys think about this position because it's very clear quarterback is a step down from last year. It's very clear running back is a step up from last year. It's very clear at tight end, which we'll get to. There's no Brock Bowers, but it's a better overall class than last year. Receiver is the one where at the top it is clearly a step down just in terms of there's not a Marvin Harrison Jr., Malik Neighbors. I mean, maybe you could make the case that Tevin McMillan is close to that. I'm curious to see what you guys say, but they don't have this kind of the big trio throw Dunze in there that we had last year of all going in the top 10. However, there are a lot of names that really interest me, and I think the depth might be pretty intriguing, even though last year's class was also pretty excellent. I think it probably is a step down, but I don't know if it's as clear-cut as maybe I would have thought, A, going into the college season, or B, as it is at the other positions in terms of a step up or a step down. So, Fitz, what's kind of before getting into the name specifically, your kind of overall projection of this class in terms of how it relates to some recent years, where the last thing I'll say is you hear people say a lot, like, we're basically never going to have a bad receiver class again because of just the way these guys are developing in high school and in college is so different than it was 20 years ago. So, like, I even if it is a step down from last year, if that's your opinion, it's not that it's bad. There's always going to be depth at this position.
Yeah, I think there are 4 guys worthy, without question, of being first-round picks. 3 without question and 1 with a big question, which I'll get to in a minute. And then there are some really interesting guys after that. All right, let's get to that big question. Travis Hunter of Colorado. Like, he is if we knew he was going to be a full-time wide receiver, I would rank him ahead of Tat McMillan. Like, he is that good. I mean, he is just an absolute freak athlete. He's extremely nuanced and smart, too. It's not just pure athleticism. I mean, he is just... I saw a highlight that I had not seen before of him almost like contorting himself in half backwards to catch a throw that was behind him. And I don't know how many other people on the planet could make that catch. He is just an absolute freak, but he plays cornerback. He played both in the NFL. He's not going to be able to play both, or played both in college, will not be able to play both full-time in the NFL. We know that. I saw Lance Zierlein of NFL.com, who does scouting reports for them, tweet out that he had talked to, now I didn't understand if he said 4 teams or if he was using a ratio of 3-1, but he said of the teams, people from teams he had talked to, 3 of them saw Hunter as a cornerback first. 1 saw him as a wide receiver first. I don't know if that was a 3 teams to 1 or a 3-1 ratio, but that's kind of how I see it too. More of the Charles Woodson prototype where he's a cornerback first who can be a 4th wide receiver. Now, I don't care if he's the best 4th receiver in the league. A 4th receiver is not worth a first-round pick in fantasy. And my fear is that even after the NFL draft, whatever team takes him is going to be coy about how he's going to be used by the time we have our rookie drafts, and we are left to guess what sort of role he's going to have in an offense. And that's going to be sort of terrifying because, like, I don't want to miss out on the talent. I don't want to draft a guy who's got a 20% snap share in an offense.
Talking about that highlight, Fitz, I saw somebody, I forget who it was, made the comparison to like kind of the body control of Justin Jefferson, like, which is how he can contort himself to make catches. And I can't kind of unsee that. Obviously a different player in other respects, but I feel like the overwhelming majority of analysis I've seen about Travis Hunter is, and this isn't talking directly to teams, this is just kind of, evaluators and kind of the draft industrial complex, is full-time cornerback, will have some packages at receiver.
Yep.
And like, unless a team comes out and unequivocally, the team who drafts him comes out and unequivocally says he is a receiver, he is not playing defense, I don't think I will draft him in any rookie drafts. Like, I will be too afraid that I'm buying into the overall talent and hype, but I'm getting a guy who's not going to, like you said, a wide receiver 4, which is just not going to be worthwhile. So, like, as much as I want to have Travis Hunter on my team because he's this freakish athlete, the Shohei Ohtani of college football, I'm like, can't bring myself to I take that risk unless a team leaves absolutely no doubt in our minds, which I do not expect to happen. So I think he's somebody I will not be drafting. Where I mean, if he falls a couple rounds, sure, but I'll take a swing on the talent. But like, where I expect him to go in rookie drafts, just because of the name, I will not be in on him, I don't think. Bogman, how do you kind of evaluate just the situation overall with Travis Hunter?
I think you have to let him try it, right? And I think that's the whole thing. Is I think Fitz is probably correct in that he can't do it in the NFL. It's too much to do. There's too many games. You're not getting hit by guys that are going to be selling used cars, in the NFL. These are all professional NFL players. So I don't think you can do it both ways, but I think you got to let him try it. And I think the easiest way to do that is to start him at corner and then put him in packages on offense. So I think that is the ultimate end game for his rookie season. Now, is he starting to get torched or whatever at corner? I don't think that's possible, honestly. But if he just doesn't perform well as a corner, maybe they just flip him to wide receiver full time. But I'm with you. He's going to get drafted on name value, probably too high in most rookie drafts. So probably won't be a guy that I'll be crazy high on. But if he does go to a team and they say, no, he ain't a corner, he's a wide receiver for us, and we're not going to mess with the corner stuff, he will go to number 1 on my board. I mean, that is the type of athlete he is.
Yeah. So, Fitz, you mentioned, maybe as many as 4 receivers that you feel very good about. Obviously, Hunter has the question marks for the other 3. I'm sure Ted McMillan is one of them, and I'm sure Luther Burden is one of them. Is Emeka Egbuka the 4th, or is it a different name?
Yeah, Emeka Egbuka. I think he belongs in the back of the first round. A guy who, just 2 years of outstanding productivity at Ohio State, with a down year in 2023 because of injuries. But this guy has always been surrounded by ridiculously talented wide receivers and has still been super productive and just an advanced route runner, a guy who's probably going to be one of the 20, 25 best route runners in the league as soon as he steps in. So good after the catch, reliable hands. I mean, I feel like his floor is so safe that's going to be the appealing thing. Like Luther Burden, who knows? Like Luther Burden could be a superstar or he could be kind of a bust. But Emeka Egbuka, I think, is going to be like a ringing double to the gap, where some of these other guys are swing for the fences, home run or strikeout picks.
I really like Luther Burden, by the way. And by the way, maybe we shouldn't have skipped over them to jump to the last guy in that group. Like Ted McMillan and Luther Burden are highly rated receiving prospects. They're very different players, obviously, from each other.
And they both lost a little going in from where they were at the beginning of the year to the end of the year. Burden, because he was hurt. Ted McMillan really had some bad QB play. So... yeah, they both fell a little bit from their initial rating before the season started.
So Bogman, set aside Ashton Jeanty, we know he's going first, and set aside the quarterbacks because that's going to depend on need and just your confidence level in those guys. Of the other prospects, do you see it as the running backs should all go ahead of these receivers? Do you see it as kind of interspersed with each other? Do you see it as McMillan and Burden should be the 2nd and 3rd picks, and then you get into the tier 2 running backs? How do you kind of put those positions together, again, setting aside Jeanty?
Yeah, I think there's a group of those running backs, Hampton and the 2 Ohio State guys. I'd throw Scattaboo in there as well, with Burden and Ted. And, obviously, depending on what happens with Travis Hunter. And I kind of really like Trey Harris still, but availability is the best ability. He might slip because of his injury-prone stuff, and if he doesn't run well, he's going to slip even further.
He's not gonna run well. Spoiler.
Yeah. I don't know if he runs well either, but I do really like him as a wideout. So maybe I'm a little too hyped on him now. Maybe that'll cool down. But I think those guys are the next group, and I think landing spot is going to, really force us to adjust, and that will be the big separator of those guys.
So, Fitz, for you, who's wide receiver 5? Again, assuming we're putting Hunter into that top 4. Who's next? Is it one of these Texas guys, Isaiah Bond, Matthew Golden? Is it Stanford guy? I actually going to just hand up. I don't know how to pronounce his name. Elik
Eomanor. And he's my number 5.
Okay.
He's my number 5. And you can ask Travis Hunter about him because he had 13 catches for 294 yards and 3 touchdowns against Colorado in 2023. Man, he is a fun one. He is 6'2", 210, just big, powerfully built possession receiver with this big
6'2" that plays 6'6", right?
Yeah. Wait, is 6'2" right, Boggs? What's I'm just checking your sheet here. We have him listed 6'2", 210. So yeah, I mean, he is just and he is a load to bring down, man. When you it was fun to watch his film because I had maybe seen 3 minutes of a Stanford game all last year when some other game was in commercial. But he catches the ball and it's one guy trying to tackle him, 2 guys trying to tackle him, other guys running over from across the field to try to help bring this dude down. Eats up yardage after the catch with these big long strides. But makes acrobatic catches. The only thing is, like, pretty basic route tree, it seemed like. So my worrisome comp here, and I don't mean to terrify anyone with this, is Treylon Burks. Like, that's a little bit terrifying, and I'm kind of a sucker for those prototypes, like the big catch and run, hard to tackle guys. And but man, like,
there's some real size to this class, Fitz. I mean, when you look at the kind of the chart that Bogman put together for us, the height and weight. I mean, if you take out Travis Hunter, who's a little lighter because he's a cornerback, I mean, it's a lot of guys who are over 6 feet and a lot of guys who are over 200 pounds, at the top of these rankings. It is that type of class, and I tend to really gravitate towards those players.
Yeah, not a lot of Smurfs in this class at all. I mean, it is a lot of dudes who are 6'2", 6'3", 6'5", like Savion Williams of TCU, who, might be the next Cordero Patterson, but is a lot of fun to watch when he has the ball in his hand. So, yeah, this is the size class for sure.
I want to ask, just in kind of looking further down the receiver rankings, I want to throw out Ty Felton just because I'm hosting the show and I want to talk about the Maryland guy.
I was wondering why Ty Felton's name was on this list. He's a good prospect, though.
Truthfully, some of my early kind of looking at some what other sites are putting out as rankings, and we don't have our kind of consensus rookie rankings on the site yet. I have seen a couple of other places have him, up there in kind of that top 25 to 30 range of the rookie rankings. And obviously, as a Maryland guy, I watched a lot of Ty Felton this year, and he was awesome. He was so unbelievably productive this season, despite really a huge step down in quarterback play because they lost Lia Tagovailoa this year. They went to Billy Edwards Jr., and the dude tries hard, but I mean, he is not Talia in terms of the arm. And Ty Felton was really productive from day one, an all Big Ten type of receiver this year. So I was actually really surprised, Bogman, you have in the kind of Google sheet you put together. I was surprised to see how low Ty Felton is in the PFF ranking because I was really impressed with watching. I'm not saying he should be in the conversation as a first-round receiver or anything, but I wanted to at least ask about him because A, he's a Terp, but B, like he's ranked lower than Caden Prather, also from Maryland, according to PFF. I don't get that at all. Like, I would much rather have Ty Felton on my NFL team.
I think
so good last year.
Correct me if I'm mistaken, Worm, but was Prather like a big-time recruit coming out? I think
he transferred in. And
maybe that's what it
was.
From,
I want to say West Virginia. And so they only had him for the back half of his career. But.
Yeah, I think maybe he was a bigger recruit than Ty Felton. I think that is probably what that was. But yeah, I mean, he's a very productive player. And if you want to talk about production in this class, I mean, you saw what Matthew Golden did in the tournament for Texas, right? Not a big name before that, a transfer coming in from Houston. A little bit undersized, one of the few guys that doesn't have size in this class that may knock him a little bit. Restrepo is your all-time leading Miami Hurricanes wide receiver. So of all time over the playmaker, Mike Irvin, right? So, there is a lot of production here. Higgins was a huge part of Iowa State's offense, a big dude. Nick Nash had 1 million catches this year.
Million touchdowns. I think Nash led FBS in touchdowns, like 15 or something.
Yeah, he had a ton. I mean, the only time he didn't get it was the time I bet on him. So Alec Ayemaner made me a lot of money. So I bet I had a lot of props on Alec. So I watched him way more than 3 minutes of the Stanford game because I was like, just one more catch. Come on, get my prop. So I watched a ton of him. And then, we just go down this list as we're mentioned. Isaiah Bond didn't get a lot of time. He's a big-time recruit. Jalen Royals was so electric at Utah State. He's high. And, I mean, you guys don't even know the man crush that Fitz has for Savion Williams. I mean, it was 50% of our Discord the other day. He was talking about Savion Williams. He loves this dude.
I mean, he is an absolute freak, Bogman. Like, watching him, I mean, he will, like, hurdle dudes, put on 2 spin moves after the catch on one play, but I have to acknowledge he
Ball
is
in his hands.
Yeah, he is a Cordero Patterson. What was the other scary name? Laviska Shenault type of prospect, where it's like all after the catch. And I acknowledge I'm probably not going to be suckered into taking him even in the first 3 rounds of rookie drafts. But man, turn on the highlights of Savion Williams, and you too will fall in love with this guy. But it's Bogman, remarkable that we get another pair of really interesting Texas recruits. Maybe not as heralded as Worthy and Adonai Mitchell, but I think I'm partial to Matthew Golden over Isaiah Bond. I think he's the better prospect, big time speed. And Worm, I'll weigh in on Ty Felton. Like, when you threw him on the show sheet, I'm like, oh, come on, this is just Worm being a Maryland homer. And then, you see the dimensions, 6'2", 180 or whatever. But, like, this dude does not look that skinny. He's surprisingly, he'll try to fight through contact. He's
really tough.
Yeah, not shy about going over the middle. And, dude, he was one of the best ball trackers of all the wide receivers I've been watching over the last few days. And I've been going down rabbit holes big time with film breakdowns. His ball tracking is among the best in this class. He's got some ball skills, man. I think he's going to be.
He's a good player.
Yeah, I think he's probably going to go somewhere around pick 100, which is back end of day 3. I would bet within 20 picks either way of pick 100. Wouldn't shock me if he went early 3rd. Wouldn't shock me if he went late 4th, but I think that's kind of his comfort zone for the draft.
I think you're right about that range, and I think he's going to be a great pick at that range. I think he's going to be a guy who's going to be an NFL wide receiver for many years, and he is not Stephon Diggs. In no way am I saying he is that, but I remember the Stephon Diggs year, he fell somewhat due to injury stuff and some off-field stuff with him, but also because Maryland had terrible quarterback play and you didn't get to really see the talent. I don't want to make that mistake, and I happen to be highlighting Ty Felton here because he's a Terp, but I don't want to make that mistake with any receiver and hold their college quarterback against them when I think they are talented. And if you're productive with the passing game that Maryland was he had in 12 games, 96 catches, over 1,100 yards, and 9 touchdowns with very poor passing game last year. I am just very in on that type of player and buying the dip.
There's another player kind of like that in terms of just their offense didn't throw the ball a lot. And Ricky White, the UNLV wide receiver, they just don't throw the ball a ton. They are a very, very run-heavy team at UNLV. They went from Matt Sluka, who never threw it, to Haj Malik Williams, who threw it a little more. And this dude still had 79 catches, 1,041 yards, and 11 touchdowns. That was coming off a 1,483-yard season the year before. So Ricky White, also a dude that a little bit hampered by his college production, but is potentially a better pro in a much heavier passing system.
If you want a chance to win a signed TJ Hawkinson Vikings helmet for free, courtesy of our friends at pristineauction.com, all you need to do is head to fantasypros.com/contest, complete the form, and either download the Fantasy Pros My Playbook app, leave a review for the podcast, or follow us on X, Instagram, or TikTok for as long as it's still around at Fantasy Pros. The more actions you complete, the more entries you receive. We will be announcing a winner right here on the podcast. If you're watching on YouTube, be sure to subscribe and turn on those notifications so you can be alerted when new episodes are up and to claim your prize. All right, guys, one position left. It's the tight ends. Last year, it was very easy to talk about tight ends because it was, what do we think about Brock Bowers? Love him. Not really anybody else worth diving too far into. This year, it's a bit different. Obviously, there's a few names, and there is no Brock Bowers, of course, because most years there won't be a Brock Bowers. Obviously, historically good prospect there, but there are some names that we really like here. Kind of the 3 that stand out to me at the top, at least at the top in terms of how I'm thinking about it. Tyler Warren out of Penn State, Colston Loveland from Michigan, Harold Fannin Jr. from Bowling Green. Are those the same 3 names you would agree with, Fitz, or would you put Gunnar Helm or Mason Taylor or anybody else in there?
No, it's those 3, and I think it's conceivable that all 3 are first-round picks. Fannin is the guy people might not be totally familiar with, and I think Tyler Warren and Colston Loveland are going to be in every mock draft in the first round. I don't know if Fannin will be. Fannin's different. So of all 3 of these guys, Loveland is the only one who didn't put up numbers that would bug your eyes out. But remember when everyone was like, well, how do we know if J.J. McCarthy is a good quarterback? Michigan didn't throw much. Well, Michigan didn't throw much, so don't hold that against Colston Loveland. But he and Warren have this prototypical size. They're both around 6'5", both around 250. And Loveland is really not far behind Warren, if at all. Warren, we saw him in the college football playoff. I assume everyone watched what he can do, and he looks like basically the second coming of Travis Kelce. So Fannin is the interesting one. So this past year, I think Ty Warren had like 104 catches, 1,200 yards, 8 touchdowns. Fannin is like, hold my beer, had 117 catches, 1,500 yards for Bowling Green, 10 touchdowns. The only thing with Fannin is that while these other guys are like 6'5", 250, I want to say Fannin's like 6'3", 230. So you don't know if he's going to be on the field as often. The other guys are going to have giant snap shares. Fannin might be like kind of a part-time player because of his size, but boy, can this guy do damage in the passing game. So, man, really exciting group. But yes, to me, there is a clear top 3, and it's those guys.
Is that the order? Warren, Loveland, Fannin?
For me, as of now, probably yes. I reserve the right to change my mind on that, though.
Bogman, just in looking at those 3, again, same question. Are those the right 3, and is that the right order?
I put Gunnar Helm in there, maybe a little bit of Texas homerism, but the body is incredible. I think he can go up and make some good catches. And, Texas had a lot of weapons. So Gunnar Helm still saw a decent amount of catches. But I just think he's another prototypical tight end.
I just made us talk about Ty Felton in our introductory rookie class preview show, so I will allow you to bring up a Texas guy.
Yeah, Gunnar Helm, I mean, Texas has a lot of prospects. They have, Kelvin Banks is going to go probably top 10 as well in terms of an offensive lineman, a lot of defensive prospects as well. So I don't want to harp too much on Texas, but I do like Gunnar Helm a lot. But it's Tyler Warren by a lot here. Colston Loveland is probably exactly what Fitz said. I mean, if you want to talk about miserable quarterback play, I don't know if I remember a big-time school having worse quarterback play than Michigan had this year.
Bad.
It was awful. It was historically bad. They played musical chairs. They had so many different ones. They ran at an insane clip. Never held the ball. Just terrible offensive performance from that team overall. But Colston Loveland was the one bright spot. So I think both those guys, as Fitz said, are clear first-rounders. Maybe Harold Fannin falls into the second round, day 2, because of his size and the fact that he's not so much of an inline guy. But who cares? I mean, Mark Andrews is out there, as a slot wide receiver half the time. Isaiah Likely is a bunch of the time. Trey McBride is a bunch. You know what I mean? So all of these guys, today's NFL in the tight end is not all inline blocking. So Harold Fannin should still go very, very high and be insanely productive. Fitz, in terms of, where would you put Tyler Warren right now? It's Bowers, McBride, Laporta, Kittle, and then you have the group of Hawkinson, Andrews, and Njoku. That's tier 1 and tier 2. Does Warren go in there? Is he just below those guys? Where would you put him today?
Probably top 5 for Dynasty.
I think so, too.
I mean, he did look like a young Travis Kelce. It was, and doing it for a big-time program that didn't have much else as far as pass catchers, like not a lot of star-studded wide receiver.
Another everybody knows what's coming.
Yep.
And they still can't stop it.
Is there a preferred destination? Like if he goes to Denver where there's a clear opportunity, young quarterback, gets with Sean Payton, like something like that, or would that move him up even more for you?
Denver would be a great one for Warren. How can you not see the love connection between Jim Harbaugh and Colston Loveland at with Loveland going to the Chargers?
They need a number 2.
They really do.
Yeah.
So they need more pass catching weaponry. Like that would be a great match. But Denver would be a good one for Warren. But man, I think that dude would fit just about anywhere where tight end help is needed. Like the only place I don't want to see him go to the Colts. The Colts need tight end help, but like I don't want to see Warren go to the Colts and be paired with a maybe below average passer as a starting quarterback.
Is there anybody else worth mentioning? I mean, obviously Bogman brought up Gunnar Helm. Just as you get further down the list beyond these top 3 or 4, is there anybody else that sticks out to you as this is kind of a sleeper guy that I want to keep my eye on, who, depending on landing spot, I might like a bit, or is it kind of top 3 or 4 or bust?
Yeah, how about a legacy guy for NFL bloodlines, Oronde Gadsden Jr. from Syracuse? Kind of another move tight end guy like Fannin, probably too light to play in line, but another really impressive pass catcher. Boggs, who are some of the other guys you like? I know you rattle off a bunch in our Discord show.
Legacy guys. How about Mason Taylor? Jason Taylor's son.
That's right.
Yeah, from LSU. I think he could get on there. He's huge frame. Great catching the ball away from his body. Obviously, those super long arms, just like his dad had. Very good pass catcher as well. And there's some other guys down here that are interesting. You mentioned Gadsden. I think Terrence Ferguson could have been more productive, but they had so many weapons at Oregon.
Jake
bringing Stool
from Clemson,
from Clemson had some big time games, and just every Iowa tight end has to be considered. And Mitchell Evans, we'll be able to see some of him on Monday in the national title game. Riley Leonard throwing to him. He's become a bigger piece of this offense moving down the stretch here. I think he's had 5 receptions in 3 of the last 4 games for the Irish. So I think he could be, if he has a good combine, he could be on a lot of radars as well.
One of my big takeaways from this overall conversation is, last year you really wanted to pick in that top 8, and then that back half of the first, or really the back, third of the first round, there wasn't a lot of difference between those last 3 or 4 picks in the first round and maybe the first half of the second round. Like they were favorites, and obviously in hindsight, guys look a lot better now. But in terms of how we were approaching going in, there's a drop off after the top 8, and then like kind of a glom of people. I feel like that back end of the first round, early second, is actually a really good spot to be this year, because obviously, like Genty's going 1. He's kind of a tier of his own. Guys like McMillan are up there in the quarterbacks. But then there's a lot of running backs. There's a lot of receivers, and there's 3 tight ends. There's just so much depth to this class in terms of that first round, early second, that I think, obviously you'll prefer one position or another based on need or landing spot. You might have a favorite player in that group, but I feel like just in terms of how we're starting off this conversation, there's not a ton separating that range, and I'm going to be totally fine with whoever I take in with an early second round pick or a late first. I think I'm going to be pretty happy with a lot of those options.
Agreed. And that's I'm probably less than a week away from doing my first set of rookie rankings. I think doing the positional rankings might not be that hard. What's going to be hard is doing the overall rankings and trying to figure out how to sort out Luther Burden versus Tyler Warren versus Travion Henderson. That's going to be the hard
landing
part.
Spot is huge every year, but this year I think it's going to be the big separator going into drafts.
I don't have
post NFL draft. Then you're going to see much more concrete rankings on these guys.
I don't have the schedule up in front of me, but I think our first rookie mock draft is going to be in early February, a couple weeks from now after the Senior Bowl. I'm really excited to see how something like that shakes out. And I get a feeling, because we're going to do multiple of them during draft season, I get a feeling, unlike last year where you sort of fell into a pattern of you kind of know what it's going to look like, I think it's going to be very different each time. And when we shake up the order between the 3 of us of who's drafting when, I think those mocks are going to look very different in those first, 15 to 18 picks, just depending on personal preference and how it shakes out. So I'm really excited.
Plenty of time for you to take Ty Felton all the time.
I'll take him with the last pick in every one of those mocks. You guys can save him for me. Anything else we didn't mention here, just as an initial preview, like, oh, we forgot to say this guy's name, or this is my favorite sleeper, or do you guys think we kind of hit it all?
I think we got most of it. I'm sure there's guys that'll pop up that we didn't mention today, but I think we got most of it.
Yeah, there are going to be guys who test their way into the conversation, and maybe some guys who test their way out of the conversation. So, looking forward to the process, and this is going to be a fun runway in the all the way up to the liftoff of the NFL draft.
It's not as fun as in-season football, but it's a nice, like, you don't just fall off a cliff after the season. You kind of get to transition to the off season and really dive into another kind of fun thing to stimulate the mind and think about dynasty football. So I'm really excited for draft season as well. We'll wrap up there. For Bogman and Fitz, I'm Ryan Wormeli. Thanks everybody for tuning in, and we'll see you again next time.